Hey everybody, Caleb here in the Rosa String Works workshop. Today I've got this old Gibson. I think this is a 50s Gibson and it is in a world of hurt. I'll bring it up close and maybe you can see some of the issues we got. We got a crack right here. And it's got some tension on this string because we wanted to see where it was. It's got quite the bulge and really high strings. As well, it's kind of dipped out right in here. I think because of this crack, the whole area has kind of moved forward. I think you can kind of see that up in here. Somebody else has worked on this. You can see there's a cleat there on the back. Back seam seems to be separating to some degree. There's all sorts of cleats on the inside, on the top. This thing is in some serious hurt. We're gonna have to do quite a bit to this. So I'm not going to avoid it any further. I'm going to set it down and we can start getting to work on it. So before I get going taking the strings off here, I thought you should see where this is here. There's a gap between the black top and the binding. And as I take the string tension off, I'll bring it back. You can see the gap there. I'll bring it back up close so you can see it again, how much it moves. So now it's got all the tension off of it. You could probably see it's almost flush. That's how far it moved with the string tension because of this crack. So we're going to have our work cut out for us getting this all fixed up. I'll get the strings the rest of the way off of here and we can move on. So I got the strings all the way off of here. And yeah, I just wanted to give you another good look here. This, without the tension on here, this is kind of flattened out, as is back here, and this is really flattened out. It doesn't look like there's that much wrong with it when there's no tension on it. But we know different because we put the tension on it. There's this cleat on the inside here on the back seam. There's also one about here on the back seam. I don't think I can show it to you. There was one here. You might be able to see where it was. It's now floating around on the inside. There's kind of a cleat across here, but it doesn't really cover this crack. I don't really know what good that does. There's another cleat, I think it's about here, that looks like it was aimed for this crack and they missed. There's also an extra piece on top of the bridge plate that doesn't look like it was doing a whole lot, but you're going to get to see all of that because we've pretty much decided the back's coming off. So I'm going to start working on getting the back off of here. I am going to score the binding so that I can get it off, hopefully in one piece, but probably not because I can see it's cracked in a couple of spots up towards the top. I'm going to start with a scalpel blade. I think this is probably my best bet, and do light passes. This is going to take some time, but you gotta do what you gotta do to get it off nice and clean. So it's quite a bit of time later, and I've got most of the binding off. I was hoping I was going to get it off all in one piece, but you know, I think I pointed out that there were a couple of cracks up towards the top, and of course that's where it broke. I've got the pieces that I've got off taped on so I can keep track of where they go, but I can set this whole thing to the side. There's still probably two pieces in here up at the neck, but they're so small I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get them out, and I think I could start working on getting the back off if I start at the tail block. So I think that's the next thing I'm going to do is go get the heater out and start warming up some tools so we can start working on getting this back off. So I've got the tools heating up just off camera here in the oven that we were sent by a very kind viewer, and they're pretty much warm. I've started a little ways along here, so I thought I'd show you a little bit. Just trying to get them worked in between the top and the lining on the inside. There's a couple of spots where I'm pretty sure this is the end of a brace. It's kind of dark there. I think you can kind of see that dark spot. There's another one up here. I'm pretty sure that's the end of a brace, so I'll have to avoid it more or less. Alright, I'm going to let that heat up a little bit more. I'm going to go ahead and turn the camera off. I'll bring you back once I've made a little bit more progress. I've just about got the back off of here. I ended up getting one more piece of binding out. I'll try to hold on to that. I'm up to the neck block is where I'm at, and it's kind of hard to get to. Trying to get, you know, between the back and the neck block is not the easiest thing to do when you can't just come straight at it. Well, I got it. It just took a lot more working and it finally came off. And I'm not going to tell you it came off perfect, because there's some spots that need some work, and I've already started putting it back together more or less. And that's the first thing I'm going to do, is I'm going to go through on the back and glue together any places that have broken off or that were already broken off. Any cracks, like the back seam was already coming loose, so you can see that. I'm going to go ahead and glue that back together. I've got the clamp that pulls the sides together, so we're going to do that. But now I can kind of show you the inside. You can see, I think there's been at least 2 people in here, because we have this colored cleat and this colored cleat. You can see this cleat's the one that totally missed the crack here. I think that's, no, that's spruce as well. Going around the sound hole, there's a cleat kind of thing here. You can see there's a maple, I guess it's a cleat is what you would call it, underneath the spruce bridge plate. Here's a loose cleat from the back. Somebody has tried to re-glue these braces down. Somebody's tried, but that's loose on the end. This is all sorts of broken on the end. It's loose on this end as well. I'm having a hard time keeping it in camera and trying to look at it. It's broken and loose down here. It's a mess. It's going to need some work. I haven't really looked at the back braces, but I'm going to set this to the side and get the back a little bit glued up, and then maybe we'll come back to this while the back is drying. So I've got a couple of little places glued up, but since I'm going to work on the back here, I've been looking at these cleats, and you know, there was one here as well, and I think I'm going to take these cleats off. I'm going to clean the whole back up, and then I think we're going to just put the regular strip down the whole center seam, you know, because it's coming apart in so many places. I can even see it's coming apart in here, you know, and it came apart back here. I think we're just going to put the whole strip down the whole center of the back. And that'll be our one large cleat to make sure it won't come apart again. And also, if I take these off, I clean the whole thing up, and I think it's going to work better, look better, and just be better overall. So I'm going to start working on getting these cleats off of here. I think I'm going to use a chisel, and I might just take pieces off at a time. Or it just comes off. That works too. These cleats were really a pain to take off.
Yeah, I bet you they just pop right off.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's usually the way that kind of stuff is.
So I'm working on cleaning this back up, and I've gone to some 180, and I can't confirm this, but I'm pretty sure something died in here. And what you see here is what's left over. I started out with a razor blade, just scraping off all the stuff that was on top, and there was lots of little hair and gunk, and now I'm doing sandpaper and hoping that's gonna work. It worked pretty well up in here, but it's just a mess. So I've got a lot more cleaning to do because this really, I mean, it's getting better, but it's just taking me a long time. So I'm gonna keep going and see how far I can get with this. So I've got this cleaned up pretty good. I went and made a couple of pieces for the center strip on this back, and the grain is running opposite of the back. It's running perpendicular to it. So the grain in the back runs this way, the grain on these strips runs this way. And I think these are looking pretty good. They're just about the right thickness. I need to bevel the ends just a little bit, take off the bulk, and then I think I'm going to try to get these glued in before I go to lunch here. So I'm going to work on beveling these ends, and then I'll bring it back once I'm ready to glue them on. So I'm just going to use magnets to glue these on here. I think it's just going to be as easy as anything else and work just as fine. I've got one piece cut. I've got the biggest chisel I've got out to cut these just so that I can get a nice straight line all the way across. I've also marked the center line on the braces so I can get them nice and lined up. So I know that they're centered. Just something to help me make sure. Let that sit for quite a while I go to lunch, and when I come back it should be nice and dry. So I've kind of turned my attention to the top, and I've started kind of taking out the old braces. This one, or braces, the old cleats that is. This was above the sound hole and it really wasn't stuck. It really came off kind of by accident. I was just kind of pulling on it to see how loose it was, and it came off. So that didn't really do me any good. And then there was that cleat that was right here. It wasn't on the crack, it was right next to the crack. So I just went ahead and took that off. It didn't come off as easy, so it was soft and I just carved it away. I think I'm going to take this one off because I really don't think it's doing anything worth doing. I'm just kind of carving them away rather than prying. There's not a whole lot to them. Not very sharp. I just don't have very good control. I'll try the smaller one. So Jerry and I pretty much decided that this bridge plate needs replaced, and you know, I probably could have pried it out, but I'm gonna have as easy of a time, or maybe easier, cause less damage if I just carve it out. So I've got the little plane, and I'm just working it off, and it's coming off. And I could probably use a larger plane, but this is coming off pretty quick. I just have to turn the guitar around every once in a while and work the other way. The maple piece that was glued on here was not glued on very well, and it just popped off when I started prying on it. So I'm working on taking this whole thing off. And we wouldn't change it out if it didn't need to be done. The problem is it's a soft wood, and it has let the top become a really big bulge, and it's raising the action, which is why there's such a short saddle in the bridge. So I've got pretty much all the bridge plate off, and it might look like I'm getting ready to do something major here, but I'm really not. I just got this board, and I'm setting it in the go bar, and it's flat on the bottom, and I'm just going to press this flat in here. Press the top flat, more or less, and leave it pressed flat at least overnight, maybe a couple of days. I may get a couple other little boards and place them in there. You can't really see it. I guess you can see it a little bit better there. I'm just going to try to kind of press it flat and leave it that way for a couple of days, see if it helps. So you can see it's just pressing it flat, and we'll come back to it in a couple of days or so. So this guitar sat up clamped for almost a full week. It was last Thursday when I put it in the clamp, and it's now Wednesday. That wasn't really intentional, but I just didn't get back to it until now. You can see I've got it clamped up again to get the top flat. That is because I'm ready to put this new bridge plate in there, which is Paduke. That's pretty much our standard at this point. I've wiped the back down with acetone. I've got some clamps ready. I've got a caul ready. I'm pretty sure we're ready to go on sticking this in here. All I gotta do is get glue on here. So the bridge plate sat up overnight, and I'm going to try to get the next section of this done real quick so that I'm out of the way when Jerry wants to use the go bar. He's got some braces to put on the top. So I'm getting everything set up real quick. We got 2 braces to put back in that came out when I was trying to clean up the top and get it nice and flat. I've got the braces sitting over here. I'm going to try to press this a little flat first. So I'm going to get a block to put in here and here and press that flat. That's pretty good. I think I'll get the rest with the braces. I'm going to go ahead and start gluing them in now. I scraped the bottom of these braces to make sure there wasn't any extra glue on them, and I also cleaned up the inside of the top to make sure there wasn't any excess glue. I don't really have enough glue in this one. But really, I made sure that everything was clean before I go gluing these back on here. Otherwise, there's not a whole lot of point in doing it. So now that I've got those braces in, I did actually make a couple of cleats. I'm going to see if I can't glue these cleats in at the same time. There's this crack that runs right alongside the neck block. I'm sure you've seen it. I'm sure I've shown it. I'm going to try to cleat it while I've got everything pressed flat. I think that's a good idea. So I'm going to use this block on the upper side to give me the extra space to clamp these little things. Otherwise the bars won't bend enough to put enough pressure on them. I'll show you one of the cleats here so you can see them. That's the side that's beveled to take off the extra bulk. And they're spruce and the grain's running this way, so it runs across the crack. And I'll clamp those ones I put in there in best I can. I think we're just about good with this. We'll let this sit for a couple of hours at least. So this hasn't sat up for very long. And I'm not going to take it out yet, but I did take these two blocks out that were beside the sound hole because I'm going to put two strips of spruce in alongside the sound hole to reinforce the sound hole more or less. I noticed it's awful drooped in there, so I think this is going to help. And you know, Martin does this. And the Gibsons with the X bracing do this. So I think it's going to help it out. This one's just a hair long, I'll have to go shorten it down. But I think it's really just going to help out keep this from drooping so much, because I noticed it was really deformed. And part of that is, I think, the old pick guard shrinking. But hopefully we can help that out with some little bit of reinforcement. I gotta go shorten this one, then I'll come back and we'll glue these in. Alright, we're shortened and we're ready to go in there. So I'm gonna put some glue on here and try and clamp it down. I did bevel the corners on this, the sides. This is pretty much exactly the size that would go inside of the Martin guitar. I pulled the size of these off of the plans. The only difference would be that in an X-braced guitar, they wouldn't necessarily go right alongside the sound hole. But I think this needs them just because of how droopy the top was right around the sound hole. Alright, well, I think that's going to help out quite a bit in the long run. I don't know how well you can see that they're in there, but they are in there on each side of the sound hole. And we'll let that sit just about as long as we will with the other ones. So I think I'm just about done working on the inside of this Gibson. The only thing I'm doing now is scraping off the last of that, whatever it is, on the inside of this. It's what was on the back as well, down in this corner here. I'm using a stick I don't really care too much about, because this stuff is kind of nasty and I'd be okay with just throwing it away at the end. But overall, I'm pretty close to done on the inside of this thing, I think. So as soon as I'm done cleaning up, I'm ready to start looking at putting the back on. So I'm pretty much done with the inside of this at this point. It's as good as it's gonna get. I've worked on the cleats I've put in to make sure they're small. I've braced what I could. Made sure everything was stuck on all the ends. I'm looking at getting the back on here. And I think the way I'm going to do this is just glue on the lower bout, and then come back and we'll check the neck angle, and that's how we'll set upper bout. So basically all I got to do is get this lower section to about, here, nice and lined up, and then we'll come back and do this, after this is given time to dry. So more or less, I'm ready to go. Just making sure that it's clean enough, and I think it is. It's looking good. It's an old guitar. It needs to look like it. So, I'm going to put some glue on here. I guess I'm going to spread it with my finger, because that's what I started doing. I'll put a little bit on the back as well. I think where the block is the most important part. Everything else will go on well enough. Here we go. Trying to get all the glue off my finger, and I think I'm just about there. So we can try and glue this thing down. It's going to be hard to show you the alignment, but I will try to get it aligned. I have to go grab a couple more clamps, but this is looking really good. Nice for the lower section. These Gibsons are notoriously bad about not going back together. And they're living up to it right now. Alright, well, that's almost there. I'm going to go grab a couple more clamps and make sure this is good. This is just about going to be it, and we'll let this set up a little while. Might have to do a little adjustment, but kind of what it's going to look like once it's done. So the back on this Gibson actually sat up overnight, and I'm back working on it now, and what I've pretty much decided is where the back lines up really good at the neck is where I actually want the neck angle, so that's good. So I think I'm ready to start working on that. Alright, so I think I'm ready to glue the front of the back on the upper section. I'm going to leave most of those on just to make myself feel better about it. These two have to come off because I didn't get glue all the way up to them. And then let's get some glue in there. So I clamped this back on first thing this morning. It's now late afternoon and I'm ready to start putting the binding on here. I've got the canopy glue out and you can see the binding is sitting here. I'm going to start up at this point in the neck because there's a little line on the binding where I can see where it starts, where it comes out from behind the neck. So I have a hard starting point, that way I know where it goes. So the back binding setup for well over the weekend. I'm ready to start moving on with this guitar. Something I need to do is drill out the holes because we put the new bridge plate in, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I've got a 3/16 bit. It might be too small, but it's where I'm going to start. I'll get that cleaned up here in a minute. So something Jerry and I had looked at was that the old saddle that was in here was really short, and it probably needed that considering the amount of bulge it had, far more than it would have needed. So because we've flattened this back out a little bit, this is probably going to be too short, so I've already gone ahead and started making a new saddle for this. It's fitting a little tight right now. I'm going to take a little bit more off the ends. It's just a hair too long. So we've got a new saddle coming along. Then really the next thing I need to do, besides clean up my holes, is start looking at the frets on this, making sure the fretboard is good. I'm going to go ahead and vacuum this out, and then I'll turn the camera back on and we can look at the fretboard a little bit more. As I was looking at it, I could see there's a little bit of a gap, so I'm going to go ahead and tighten the truss rod just a hair. Got the truss rod cover off. I just got to get the nut driver for it. So I'll just give this a little bit of a turn. That's about it. I just barely moved it. I'm going to check this again. That looks a lot better. It was just a little bit kind of off. And now with just that slightest bit of turn, it definitely looks a lot more level throughout. It all looks the same at every fret. So I know the board is flat now. So what I'll do now, I'm just going to check the frets. I'm going to use a just regular straight edge, see if I see anything wonky there. I don't see anything. And they're actually in really good shape, so I'm kind of thinking I probably won't do a whole lot to these frets at all. There's not a whole lot of point in spending time on something that it doesn't need done. So I'll go ahead and move on from that. Even though I'm not doing anything to the frets, I can see the fretboard is a little bit filthy, a little dirty. And there's a couple spots I want to scrape, so I'm going to grab my razor blade and scrape a couple of spots. Alright, well, that's not bad. I think that's pretty good. I'll go get the oil, and I'll get the cover back on here, and I think we're ready to start stringing this thing. So I've got strings on it, and I'm up to about a half step down. It's probably a little out because of new strings, but these are the strings I put on here, are these GHS phosphor bronze strings. These are basically the same as the Diodario we usually use. We had a little bit of a problem getting Diodarios back in stock, so we're using GHS for now. It's fine, they're the same phosphor bronze and the same gauges, so just a different brand. I've noticed that the action is really high at the 12. Well, not so much on the bass strings, but really high on the treble strings. I haven't checked yet, but I will do that now. And we are still a half step down, so it's more of an estimate than an exact at this point. It should be awful close. Yeah, we're sitting at almost 120 thousandths on the high E, and we really want that to be down at least 80. I guess we're sitting about the same place on the low E as well, but we only want that down to maybe 90. So we got a little ways to come down. That'll be at the saddle. A couple of things. I'm not going to take this down right now. I think I'm going to leave this just tuned up like this. It's getting late in the day, and considering the nature of the repair that I did, before I glued this brace back in and cleated this crack and re-glued this crack here, the whole neck moved when I tuned the guitar up. So I'm going to leave this like this overnight just to make sure it's not going to come loose. Then come tomorrow, I'll lower the saddle. The other thing I've just noticed as I've been playing with this is it's got kind of a different sound. It's not really tinny like a smaller bodied acoustic is, and this is, I say it's probably a little bit smaller than the J45 or the J50, but it's not really got the bassiness that the J45 and the J50 have. But it's not really tinny. It's kind of a woody sound. You know, it's not very similar to the other Gibson guitars I've been playing. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and leave this overnight, and we'll come back to this in the morning and I'll lower the saddle down and we should be just about good to go, assuming nothing goes wrong. And I really don't think it will. I'm just going to leave it just to be safe. So we'll see it again tomorrow morning. So it's the next morning and this is still looking good, I think. I haven't really looked at it, but nothing looked wrong when I went and grabbed it. So I think we're good to go here. I got some measurements off of the saddle, so I'm ready to take it down. I'm going to take 80 thousandths off the treble side and 60 thousandths off the bass side, and I think it's going to be fine. It is sitting awful high. So you can see I've got both ends marked with the Sharpie. Now what I'll do is I'll get my calipers. I'll open it up to the thickness that I want, or the measurement I want, which we'll start with 60 thousandths. Try to overshot it. 59.5 is close enough. So I want 60 thousandths off the bass side. So I've got 60 thousandths on my calipers. We're close enough. And I'll just line it up at the bottom and scratch a mark through the permanent marker. I don't know how well you can see it, but I think you can. There's a mark in there, and then when I go to sand it, I'll sand it to that mark. And I'll get the other side marked up, and I'll go sand it. I'll bring it back once I've got it mostly put back together. Well, I think this thing is just about done now. I've got all the strings back on it, and the action's set really good. It's at about 90 on the high E and about 90 on the low E and 80 on the high E. So it's sitting at a nice height, and it sounds really good, I think. I think it's got a really nice sound. We did a lot of work to this thing. We had the back all the way off. You can see we've got that new strip down the center of the back because the back seam was coming apart. I'll show you the back. It's got the miting back on. I think it's a really clean job, actually. It's kind of you get as good as you can get on these kinds of things. And this one actually turned out pretty good for putting it back together. This thing was really tore up. The biggest thing I think was this crack right here that we glued back together, and this brace that was loose, we glued that brace back on, because it used to be, before we started, the whole neck moved forward, the whole block moved forward when you tune the strings up to pitch. Now because we got that brace glued back together, we got that crack closed up, it doesn't move anymore, so we can get the action low. I think we fought a little bit of belly bulge as well. And yeah, I think it's better. I really do think we've done a lot of good work to this thing. It still looks like an older instrument, but not one that's quite so fallen apart. I think I'm going to leave this sitting up, tuned to pitch, a couple of days just to make sure that crack's not going to open back up and the neck's not going to move. But beyond that, I think this thing's going to be good to go. Hope you enjoyed watching this Gibson repair. It was kind of a big one. If you did enjoy it, a thumbs up would be appreciated. If you haven't already, please subscribe. We're trying to get to 100,000. Thanks for watching.